Hey there, I want to take a quick minute to tell you about something that we're releasing for the final time. If you have ever sat at your kitchen table or your desk late at night, preparing for a staff meeting, searching for a training on classroom management, parent communication, accountability, confidence, resilience, over the last decade, we built a complete library of teacher training for all of the exact issues that schools face every single day. Classroom management, parent partnership, intentional learning environments, accountability, confidence, resilience, how to run the first staff meetings, all of these foundational skills that most teams are expected to have, but were never taught. These are some of the trainings we use with schools to create shared language, strengthen staff culture, and raise the baseline of skills across the entire building. Today, Schools of Excellence is really focused on helping school owners install leadership infrastructure through standards, ownership, rhythms. And so we no longer create standalone training products like this. But I do know that many schools are still missing this foundational layer. And so instead of letting these assets sit unused, we decided to open the School Culture Vault one final time. So the School Culture Infrastructure Vault is your immediate access to a complete library of assets ready to use professional development that you can use during onboarding, staff development days, team meetings, one-on-ones, anytime you need to address recurring issues. You're not going to be piecing things together, paying outside speakers, or rebuilding your training plan from scratch every single time you have an issue. It is proven, pressure-tested, structured training that you can pull off the shelf whenever your team needs it. Now, we are making this available to only 100 schools. Once 100 schools get access to the vault, it is removed permanently. So if you want the complete training library for less than the cost of creating a single staff meeting, go to schoolsofexcellence.com/vault. Once 100 spots take the vault, it disappears for good. schoolsofexcellence.com/vault. There are some core fears that leaders have when it comes to investing in their team. And I've had too many conversations about some of those fears in the last 2 weeks that I actually looked at the data and put it together. The 5 fears that keep leaders from investing in their teams. Because if you've ever hesitated to invest in your team, it's not because you don't believe in professional development. And I hear this often when leaders hesitate. People will say, well, don't you believe in PD? Yeah. Owners believe, they want their people to grow. The challenge is you've invested before. You've bought the training. You've hired the consultant. You sent your directors to conferences. You held staff meetings. You shared resources. And for a brief moment, you allowed yourself to believe things might finally change. Maybe your team will take more ownership. Maybe the difficult conversations will get easier. Maybe the standards will hold without your constant intervention. Maybe you won't have to be the emotional and shock absorber. Everything will route back to you. But then the same pattern returns. The same issues escalate, the same conversations repeat, the same people nod in agreement in meetings and change nothing. And then you're still left carrying the same invisible weight. And now you have more additional disappointment. So when leaders say things to me like, I'm hesitating to invest, or I don't know if my staff are going to take this seriously, what they're actually saying is something much deeper. I don't know that I can afford to hope again. Because investing in your team is not just a financial decision. It's emotional. It's relational. It requires risking and believing that people can change and grow. It requires believing that your organization can evolve. It requires believing that you don't have to hold it all together forever. And when you've been disappointed before, hesitation makes a lot of sense. Over the years, I've found that the most leaders do not resist the investment themselves. They wrestle with these 5 very real fears that think they're connected to the investment, but they're not. And until we call out and address those fears, leaders stay stuck because they continue to carry the emotional and operational weight of the entire organization alone. So what's the first fear? What if nothing changes? That is probably the biggest fear. What if you invest again and still carry everything? What if your team attends the training, takes the notes, tells you it was helpful, says, this was amazing, thank you so much, we love you. And then 3 weeks later, the same problem returns. And then there's no change behind it. Because underneath, there is such a painful set of questions. Maybe my team is just never going to grow. Maybe I don't have the right people. Maybe I'm the only one who really cares. Maybe I'm always going to be the one that has to hold everything together. And that's why it feels so risky, because you're not just spending money, you're risking disappointment. So now when you hear about another resource or invest in this for your team, your body doesn't hear support. Your body hears, here is something else I will have to push. This is something else I will have to manage. This is another thing that will fall back on me. No, thank you. And that is a valid fear. Okay. Now, trainings, most of them fail because they are disconnected from the real breakdowns that happen inside of schools. They teach these generic leadership concepts and they don't have a leadership training rhythm. So those things don't actually speak from real pressure points inside of where early childhood is every day. The teacher who gossips, the director avoids conversations, the classroom looks fine when you walk in, but is so chaotic underneath, the team member who agrees in the meeting and does the complete opposite outside, the lead teacher who wants authority and wants to lead, but avoids every single component of ownership and accountability, the teacher assistant who needs feedback, but is constantly avoiding the discomfort in order to actually take that feedback, the director who escalates every single issue because she's never been mentored into, hi, you need to actually make a decision. This is why the training often fails, because it's not connected to real life. It's not connected to real life. And so I understand why you're afraid. What if nothing changes? Because a lot of the times when you invested, nothing changed. Fear number 2. What if my team feels criticized? I hear this a lot. Many owners hesitate to bring training to their team because they don't want their team to feel like, oh, you're being punished, or, oh, you guys are not good enough, or something like that. Some version of that story. They don't want their staff to think, these thoughts of like, oh, you think we're a problem? You're bringing us training because you think we're not good enough? You're trying to fix us? So the owner delays. And so instead of training the team, they coach privately. They keep softening the message. They translate and orchestrate every single piece of feedback into encouragement and motivation, and they bubble wrap it and package it so it sounds beautiful and palatable and tasteful. But the longer the owner waits to develop the team, the more frustration builds. And eventually the training actually does come out with the pressure behind it. Not because the owner is harsh or because the owner isn't kind. The owner waited until she was absolutely exhausted. And that's why framing matters, because the school culture vault is not about you are a problem. Investing in the school culture vault is about our school is growing. Our leadership capacity has to grow with it. This company is growing, and so we will no longer rely on memory or personality or last-minute conversations to get things done. Our company is growing, so we must build shared language and shared standards and shared rhythms for this company to operate, because I cannot be the emotional backstop. Our company is growing, and in order for us to become the kind of team that can carry more together, we need real training. That's not criticism. That is leadership. What if this exposes my own leadership gaps? Okay, this fear of like, oh my gosh, if I invest in my team, it will expose my own leadership gaps. I've heard this hundreds of times. What if the training reveals the expectations that I implied, but I never actually installed these expectations? What if this training shows that like people desire ownership, but I never clearly defined it? What if this training and this like asset, I see, oh my God, the standards existed in my head, but it's actually nowhere in the operating rhythm inside of my company? That's very exposing. Exposure is fear, but it is not failure. It is the beginning and the first steps of infrastructure, because you cannot build what you are unwilling to name. You cannot build what you are unwilling to name. And most of the time, your staff are not resisting clarity. They are starving for clarity. Your staff are not resisting clarity. They are starving for it. They actually want to know what matters here. What do we do when there's conflict? How do we handle feedback here? What does professionalism actually look like? What does ownership look like in this role in this season? What do I bring to the director? What am I expected to solve on my own? What do I bring to the assistant director? How do I know if I'm doing a good job? When those answers are unclear, culture becomes personal because then people guess, people react, people gossip, people avoid, people escalate. Not because they're bad people, but because infrastructure is missing. So yes, bringing in training might expose gaps in leadership, but it also is the invitation to actually close those gaps. There is a fourth fear around why leaders resist investing in their team. And that fear is, what if this becomes one more thing I have to push? Oh my gosh, I see you, my friend. This is the deepest exhaustion every leader that I've ever worked with carried. They are not afraid of the investment. They are afraid of buying themselves another job, another program that they have to remind everyone to watch, another resource that they have to chase people to implement, another folder that sits unused in their computer while every single problem still routes back to them. So this fear of, what if this becomes one more thing I have to push? Oh my God, is that a legitimate fear? Because a training library without an operating rhythm becomes an unused folder. The power is not giving your team access to more content. The power in the school culture infrastructure vault is inside the leadership rhythm, which is, okay, you are struggling with this parent conversation right now. Here is the template that you need to watch right now. Watch it or read the template, study it, come back to me in 2 days from now when we have our one-on-one, and then we're going to work through it. We have a training here on confidence and resilience. Okay, we're going to do that at our next monthly staff meeting. This person is struggling with developmentally appropriate practice. Here is this video to watch. That's how training becomes infrastructure. What happens is people invest and they want everyone to like binge all of this like content and be like, okay, you binged. Like, don't you know everything now? Don't you know how to implement everything now? Like, you guys binged for 4 days on all of this stuff. Like, aren't you going to do it now? Aren't you going to deploy all of this amazing infrastructure? No, we don't binge training. You create it on rhythm. So the fear of, what if this becomes one more thing I have to push? If you create a leadership operating rhythm on how you deploy these assets consistently, predictably, and reliably, then it actually isn't something to fear. The fifth and most glaring and hardest fear, this one like cuts to everything. And like, I'll work with leaders for years working through each of those fears, like uncovering the onion, uncovering the onion, uncovering the onion, uncovering the onion. And then we finally get to this fear. What if the truth is too hard to face? What if this proves that I actually don't have the right leaders? And sometimes training does reveal that. It actually reveals like, this person really doesn't want to grow. It shows you who's really attached and married to the old way. And that becomes data. Because right now you're carrying the cost of not knowing, and you're protecting people from the clarity while quietly resenting them for not rising up. And so training and investing in the team actually gives you a very clean read. Who leads in? Who applies this? Who uses the right language? Who takes the ownership? Who stays passive? Who resists every single standard? That tells you a story, not so you can judge them, but that you can lead from reality. From reality. Now it's scary because like, what if my team is already overwhelmed? And that's real. Early childhood is overwhelming. Teachers are managing behavior, parents, ratios, transition, documentation, emotional labor all day long. I'll say that again. I just said that really fast. Teachers are managing behavior, parents, ratios, transitions, documentation, and emotional labor all day long. And so owners are like, oh my God, this is going to feel more for them. But the right skill development does not add weight. It removes confusion. The right training and skill development does not add weight. It removes confusion. It gives people the lens and the way to handle the stuff that they're already doing. It makes one-on-ones actually the ability to give feedback that's less awkward. It gives them the ability to actually run a classroom observation with the tool, so they're running it on quality, not based on, oh my God, they had 5 paintbrushes inside of the sink and blah, blah, blah. They're such a messy person. No, it gives a difficult conversation feedback framework so that accountability doesn't have to feel so personal. It creates shared standards and conversations that reduces the consistent real-time negotiation that exhausts them, that actually makes them overwhelmed. This is not extra work. This is the infrastructure that makes the work less chaotic. And the hardest truth, that you are the only one who currently sees how serious this is. Your job is not to wait until your team asks for infrastructure. Your job is to build and install the infrastructure and invite them to rise to it. So leaders say things like, is every staff member going to be on board? I need to get buy-in. I need to get people excited. I need to get everyone on the same page. No. The better question to ask is, what will continue to happen if I do not build leadership capacity on my team? Because you're already paying the cost. It's showing up in repeated conversations, in turnover, in avoidance, in your exhaustion, in directors who care deeply but do not know how to lead clearly. It shows up in teams that want belonging but avoid responsibility. It shows up in standards that disappear the second pressure enters the building. And so that is why I created the Staff Culture Infrastructure Vault. It was built for this reason. These are field-tested trainings created from a decade of experience inside of classrooms. I worked inside of classrooms for a decade, inside classrooms and inside schools. These trainings were created from 19 years of experience of working in the field and 10 years in the classrooms. They are practical. They are specific. They are built for schools. They are designed to help your team develop core skills that create stronger culture in actual daily moments where culture is built or broken. So if you want to stop carrying a culture through reminders and frustration and invisible labor and emotional thinking, then I would love to invite you to invest in this core asset. Go to schoolsofexcellence.com/vault. We'll put the link over here as well. schoolsofexcellence.com/vault. There's only a handful of them. We are deploying this now in this particular season because our company is no longer a training company for teachers. Now we install infrastructure, but we have all of these trainings that we've developed over the last 10 years that we want to deploy into schools. And so if you want to be one of those schools that gets access to this, go to schoolsofexcellence.com/vault.